Hello, this is Del Denny with TBC Action Coach of Indiana, and I want to welcome you to the Indiana Business Spotlight series. The purpose of this series is to help promote local Indiana businesses and small businesses, because when small businesses succeed, well, we all succeed. And today I have a special guest. I have Jason Davis. Jason, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Jason, we've been chatting a little bit before we started our official interview here, but Jason, give us a little background about you and what you do.
Yeah, I am a CEO and co-founder of NerdBrand. It is a branding and advertising agency based in Louisville, Kentucky. We have clients nationwide. Our focus on branding is because we want to tell your why in the best way. Why do you get up in the morning? Why should people buy from you? That really shapes and informs everything about what you're going to do with marketing when you get to that point. So quite often people start with marketing and then kind of go backwards and try to work their way in. And we try to reverse the flow of that so that we have communications correctly across all mediums. But I started that back in I started my career as in branding and web back in 2008 when the fallout happened of the economy. I was a mechanical drafter designer for about 14 years. So when 2008 occurred, I switched vocations, planted a church, which is a side story. And then after the 2 years of that, got into doing really this very strongly. And yeah, been here ever since doing that. So.
Very, very nice. Now, tell us about your company, NerdBrand. If you had to do a 60-second commercial, what would you
Sure.
say?
Like I said, we're a branding and advertising agency in Louisville, but we've got clients in Denver, Nashville, even got a couple in LA. We're just focused on helping businesses tell their why. So we operate on three principles: why, how, what. When we start with why you get up in the morning and why I should buy from you, and trying to define that. So branding, it starts with copy. Like you get an ad, or you come to me and say, well, I want you to manage my pay-per-click ads. Well, I don't know what we're saying on the ads, and maybe what you've been saying before hasn't been working. So, we try to back the truck up all the way to the beginning and develop brand standards for everything. So colors are unified. Everything about your design on multiple mediums is unified. And that's kind of where we start at. Then we get into web development and all the other things. So, but we define the why because we believe everything's an ad. Doesn't matter what it is. Even this shirt I'm wearing is an ad because it's got the logo on it. Business cards are an ad. Your website's the biggest ad you have. So then we get into the what's. And the what's are, because we believe everything is an ad, we create websites and branding materials and sales collateral. We do SEO. We do all these other services, just like you get from a full service agency. But if it doesn't start with branding, we don't really do those what's very well. And we know a lot of people are starting there. And that's why we try to get everybody into the why and get to know you more. So that's sort of the ad for NerdBrand, honestly, is that because it's really hard to understand. I know, like, what does a branding agency do?
No, we're all curious. I love it. I mean, marketing is so important. Branding is so important. You talked about your customers a little bit of everywhere. Who is your target audience?
Because we're an agency, a lot of people ask us that because they're like, well, you got a business plan, you got to have target audience. And I'm like, well, anybody that's got a business that's trying to sell product online, which we work with people that do that for D2C. We work with higher ed, we work with B2B startups, all kinds of folks. And they all have various budgets, and we work on a retainer model so that we can actually, kind of like a radio dial it up or down based upon what you want us to do. Because by the time we define the brand and get on into all of that, we've already kind of established a budget with you. So we may dial it back down because you're like, all right, my website's done. I just need you to do these pieces. And then we do that for 6 months, manage that, remeasure it, come to the table. Every month, we're always working with you to brainstorm on what are we going to do now, So that's kind of the way that we work. We're your partner in that sense, in a real tangible sense. But it's kind of hard to say like what specific market that we could go into. We don't obviously take anybody that's just shaking money and saying, hey, come help me. We're not a gumball machine. You can't put stuff in, get stuff out. But we do try to help where we can based upon who it is. And we've, all kinds have come to our door, and we probably have said no more than we've said yes, but that's actually not a bad thing. If you're in business, you don't want to say yes to everybody because you can't help everybody. You're good at what you're good at. You got to focus on that first and foremost. And that kind of goes with your branding. If you don't know what you're good at, then why are you
Sure.
here?
Yeah.
Goes right back to what I said about the why.
Well, absolutely. Now, the last year and a half, whatever it's been now, we're kind of coming out of the pandemic. I think one thing that we're united on in the world, it's been crazy, right? Uh,
Yeah.
with business, how has your business been affected by the pandemic?
I mean, I think when I started out, maybe leaping ahead here a little bit on some of the questions you got, but most businesses that I've talked to lost about 60% of their revenue. And so, I mean, it's not really any different, I don't think, amongst most, because people just had to start weighing their options, and marketing and advertising, of course, sadly, was the first thing to go. And so a lot of the services that we had at the beginning, that's what affected us. So from a revenue standpoint, it became like strategically thinking about like what we're gonna provide, what we're going to do, in order to provide value. And so that was a challenge. We've always been a remote company. We don't have technically an office. We do have an address and location, but we don't. I mean, I've got my web developers all the way out near Frankfurt, and I'm in New Albany, and is in, he's in Louisville along with Camaria, our social media strategist, and then our creative director Mitch is like he's somewhere on the Oldham County, Jefferson County line. Not really sure because it gets weird out there when all the roads turn into numbers and not names.
Yeah, well, welcome to the country.
Yeah, so we just said, you know what, we're just going to stay remote, and that's all. So that's kind of how it really affected us. It kind of really made us more aware of who we're working with, where the money was coming from, how we were using it, and all of that business together. So um, we're excited that we're coming to the end of it, though.
I think we all are, right? It's nice to come together every now and then. Were there any other pivots you had to make in your business with I mean, you're really remote, so I think that a lot of people were pivoting to that. Did you have to do any other pivots in your business?
No, not really, because I mean, we started we started right when it began. John and I, we've known each other for 10 years or more, and I kind of reconnected with him back in December. I was going to have him become a customer or a client. I was already working with Mitch, and so, we kind of he just kind of said, you know what, let's just go ahead and merge. He said, just makes sense, because his company was a marketing agency, so I was only doing branding and web. So when it come to marketing, was looking for somebody to do just a pass through referral to, and he was going to be it. But then now it's just like now it's internalized into NerdBrand. So that was kind of a pivot, was to kind of like, okay, now we've got this other pillar that's in the company now, because Mitch and I bring the web and branding pieces, and now John comes in with the marketing solutions, and his expertise in e-commerce and in that area, and email marketing and all that is really strong for us, because he just knows how to send an email that will make money. So it's been that was the pivot for us, was to kind of like, okay, we got to now get up to date on these current things, and luckily John was already there, so that was one thing. But we started in April. Everything shut down in April. So right when we started, it was like, yay, we're starting. And everything went, nope, everything's off.
Yeah, pause, timeout. It was crazy. Well,
Yeah.
let me ask you about branding here. W- when it comes to branding, what would you say is like the number one mistake that most businesses make when it comes to branding?
Oh my goodness. I have to be careful because I don't want anybody thinking that I'm talking about them.
Everyone does. That's just social media. When you start talking about, oh, they're talking about me for sure, right? No, but
Yeah.
we're talking in generals here. So generally speaking, where do most businesses go wrong with branding?
Uh, don't focus on your logo, and don't focus on your website. That's not branding. Those are ads and identifying marks. I think where people go wrong on branding is, you know, like we do a podcast, and when we started it out, we were hitting a lot of 20-year-olds. That's not exactly the market we want to hit. So, within 6 months, we started changing the vibe and the tone of the show. Now, it's not recognizing the voice. Like, my voice is my voice. This is the way that I am. So as you hear me and see me, this is it, right? So if we can work together in the future, that's great. If we can't, no hard feelings. Not everybody can be friends. Um, but the tone of my voice will change, based upon what's going on, and that's branding and recognizing that tonally you have to be very aware. So during COVID, it wasn't really advantageous or very wise for brands to go out and start talking about get a discount because, you got tested, or, maybe even bringing that up at all. So not being, I guess, aware of the environment you're in is one of the biggest things. It's kind of like what they say, read the room. And not having an agency like ours at your side, it's really hard to read the room, and you don't have that outside view, because most of us view like we're like this, you
Yeah.
know. So that's the biggest thing, is getting them out of that mentality of staring at a mirror a foot away, and let's show you what people are seeing and what they're reading and how they're responding. So
Beautiful. I love it. Yeah. Sometimes we can get too close to the tree where we don't see the forest.
yeah, I mean, we're more likely heading to build a website for somebody that is in a similar sphere than we are, service wise. We don't care. That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
you know Sometimes you got to kind of get away from it because you're too close to it, and we help refocus and reframe according to data, according to people that interview, things like that. It's invaluable to do that.
100%. And that's the thing about, for us, we're business coaches, is that even coaches have coaches. It just,
Yeah.
you have to have somebody to help push you along, whether it's in marketing and have other marketers help you, or whether it's coaching. um Question for you. They
Mhm.
say that smart people learn from their own mistakes, but wise people learn from the mistakes of others. um what mistakes could you share for other business owners that watch this, that they could learn from? What was there, like, one mistake that you could share with us that, hey, we did this in March or April, we wish we would have done this one, that we could learn from?
Um, I think that when you're in business, and it's not really a mistake that I made, because I got a lot of advice up front, because I come from an corporate environment, and I also come from places where I've worked for a lot of agencies. I've helped create and brand a lot of agencies, and worked within them. And so I've seen a lot of the mistakes already. Um, and I think that, it's not so much mistakes. Sometimes it's just situations, where financially, when you get backed into a corner, you kind of have to make these adjustments. You may make a decision to work with a client that you regret, because that could be a huge thing that could just blow apart your internal team. Nobody's happy when that name shows up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and we've all had that. We've all experienced that. So it's like not trusting your gut, I guess, could be one mistake. Sometimes we've done that a couple times. We haven't trusted our gut. We thought, well, you know what? It's COVID. We need kind of the revenue. We're going to head take the project. And then we're like, we shouldn't have done that, because, we did our best to help them, and, our reviews are reflective of our work. But at the end of the day, we know we could have done a lot better, because they just weren't a fit. We should have focused elsewhere. So those could be very costly strategic mistakes, to not be careful of who you're working with, who you choose to work with. But if you're a new business owner, do not manage your own payroll. Get a payroll company. Get a virtual assistant. Get a get some outside help in those regards, because the amount of paperwork you're going to be dealing with is going to crush you. So you've got to get a bookkeeper, virtual assistant. You got to get somebody to manage payroll, because that's really huge. And not try to DIY everything. I see that a lot with business owners, and a lot of it comes down to cost. But I don't know. I just feel like if you can take the financial risk and do it now, you'll save yourself so much heartache and stress. So trust your gut.
100%. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Um, Jason, where can we find out more about you and your company?
Sure. Yeah. You can go to nerdbrandagency.com and see us there. You can see like the services we provide, some of the projects we've worked on, the reviews that we've had from people that love us. You can check out our podcast. New episode comes out every Friday at 11 a.m. Actually, technically, it's at 8 a.m. I'll pull the curtain back, but that's fine. It's the internet's, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
What's the name of your podcast?
Honestly, we just call it the Nerd Brand Podcast, because it actually was a podcast many years ago before it was an agency. Uh, my creative director, Mitch Gregory, was the one that said, you know what, that's a good agency name. We're going to do that. And I was like, all right, that's what we'll call it. So we never really gave it its own brand and name because it's sort of like, I felt like it would defeat the purpose anyways of getting our name out there if we called it something else. Branding.
Yeah, that's great branding. I'm with you on that. That's phenomenal. Jason, so last question here. Always love this question. It ends on a high note. Jason, what inspires you the most today?
I had to really think about that one because you kind of get into like areas that, I have a varied background from engineering, ministry, and then now this. And so, but our website, I hope under the team, when you click my face, can capture that and relay that. I really do love helping define brands and helping businesses grow in a healthy way. Because I mean, you can grow like a tumor or you can grow healthy, right? And I've seen the other way. It's not great. It's really destructive internally and externally. So, I really love being able to help them meet their goals. We don't really at NerdBrand, we always say it's a holistic thing that we try to approach. And I think that's sometimes shocking. People want a website or they want this or that. It's like, yeah, we can do that. But then we start asking other questions and seeing people light up and be like, oh God, you actually think of all those things. I enjoy that. That's something that I'm usually inspired by people that get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Well, that is awesome. I love that answer. Jason, thank you so much for coming on the Indiana Business Spotlight show. We appreciate everything that we've learned from you. I love branding. I'm a big branding guy. So I no pun intended, but I geek out. I nerd out over this stuff. So I appreciate everything that you've said. So thank you for coming on.
Sure. Absolutely.
All right.